They say some promises should never be made, and some promises should never be accepted. This is a story about both. July 1878. The Arizona desert burned under a merciless sun. A woman rode hard across the wasteland, her horse thin and exhausted. In her arms she cradled a boy who hung limp against her chest. His skin was pale as ash. His breathing came in shallow gasps. Blood stained her doeskin dress, not hers, not the boy's, but enough to tell a story of violence left behind. Ayita, that was her name. It meant first to dance in the language of her people, but there was no dancing now, only desperation. She looked back across the red rocks and sagebrush. Dust rose in the distance. 3 riders, maybe 4. They had been following her for 2 days, getting closer with each passing hour. Her son, Neshoba, 7 years old. He was dying. The sickness had started 5 days ago. Fever, then the rash across his chest and neck. Scarlet fever. She had seen it before, had watched it take children in her village, swift, merciless, fatal without medicine she did not have. So she ran. She ran from the remains of her village, from the ashes of what used to be home, from the men who wanted her dead for what her husband had done. She ran toward the only thing left, a settlement, white people, the same people who had driven her family into the wilderness, the same people who had killed her husband 8 months ago. But they would have medicine, they would have doctors, they would have a chance, even if they hated her. The town appeared like a mirage through the heat shimmer. Copper Ridge, 20 buildings scattered along a single dirt road, a church, a saloon, a general store, and at the far end smoke rising from a blacksmith's forge. Ayita's horse stumbled through the town entrance. People stopped, stared. A woman pulled her children inside. A man spat in the dirt and turned his back. She had expected this. Ayita slid from the saddle. Her legs nearly gave out. She caught herself, lifted Neshoba in her arms. He was so light now, too light. She walked to the first door, the doctor's office. A painted sign hung crooked above the entrance. She knocked, waited, knocked again. The door opened a crack. A middle-aged man peered out. His eyes went from her face to her clothing to the boy in her arms. His expression hardened. "I don't treat Indians," he said. The door slammed shut. Ayita stood there, breathed, tried the next building. The saloon owner looked at her like she was a rattlesnake on his porch. "Get out of here before I call the marshal." The Reverend at least had the decency to look ashamed when he shook his head. "I'm sorry. I cannot help you. The town would not understand." Sarah Coleman at the general store hesitated. Her hand was on the door latch. For a moment something like compassion flickered in her eyes. But fear won. She locked the door, mouthed the words, "I'm sorry," through the glass. Ayita turned in the center of the street. Neshoba stirred in her arms. "Mama," he whispered, "I'm cold." He was burning with fever. 30 people watched from windows and doorways. Not one moved to help. Then she saw him. At the far end of the street near the blacksmith's forge. A man working alone, tall, broad-shouldered. His skin was darker than the other white men. His hair hung long and black down his back in the Apache way. He was one of them. Mixed blood. She could tell from 50 yards away. He might be her only chance. Ayita walked toward the forge. Each step felt like dragging her feet through mud. Exhaustion pulled at her bones. But she kept moving. The man did not look up from his work. He hammered a piece of glowing iron with steady rhythmic strikes. Sparks scattered across the dirt floor. His face was set in concentration. A long scar ran from his forehead to his left cheek. Old, healed years ago. She stopped at the edge of his workspace. Still he did not look up. Ayita's legs gave out. She sank to her knees in the dust. Neshoba slipped from her arms and lay beside her barely conscious. Now the man stopped, set down his hammer, upturned. His eyes were the strangest thing about him, pale blue, like ice, like winter sky, eyes that did not belong in that dark face. Aita had rehearsed what she would say, in her broken English. She had practiced while riding through the desert, but now that the moment came, the words tangled in her throat. "Please," she managed. "My son, he is dying." The man with the blue eyes said nothing. His face showed nothing. "I have nothing to give you," Aita continued. Her voice cracked. "No money, no food, no gold. But if you protect him, if you save his life, I will be yours." The words hung in the air like smoke. People had gathered now, drawn by the spectacle. A dozen faces watched from doorways and windows. "I will work for you," Aita said. Each word felt like swallowing broken glass. "I will serve you, obey you. I will never leave. I will do whatever you ask. Just please, please let my son live." She bowed her head, pressed her forehead to the dirt. The ultimate surrender. Everything she was, everything she had, offered freely for one small life. Silence stretched. 10 seconds. 20. 30. The watching townspeople murmured. Some laughed. Others looked away in disgust. The man with the blue eyes stood perfectly still. Then he moved. He set down his leather work gloves, stepped forward, knelt beside Neshoba. His hands were gentle when he touched the boy's forehead, checked his pulse, looked at the rash spreading across the small chest. "Scarlet fever," he said. His voice was deep, quiet, each word carefully chosen. "The boy needs antibiotics, clean water, rest. He has maybe 3 days if he does not get help." He spoke in English, but then he switched. Words in Apache, fluid, natural. "Stand up," he said in the language of her people. "Bring the boy inside." Aita's head snapped up. Shock flooded through her. He spoke Apache. This man, this stranger. He knew her tongue. Around them the townspeople reacted. Whispers became shouts of surprise and suspicion, but the man ignored them. He was already lifting Neshoba with careful hands, already turning toward the back of the forge where a small storage shed stood. Aita scrambled to her feet, followed. She had offered herself as property, as a slave in all but name, and he had not said yes, had not said no, had simply acted. What kind of man was this? The storage shed was small. 1 room, a bed in the corner, a table, 2 chairs, a stove, clean but sparse. The home of a man who owned little and needed less. James Dalton, that was his name, though Aita did not know it yet. He laid Neshoba on the bed, the only bed, his bed. From a shelf he took clean cloth, a basin of water. He worked with the efficiency of someone who had done this before, dampened the cloth, placed it on the boy's burning forehead. Aita stood frozen in the doorway, watching, not daring to speak, not daring to hope. "When did the fever start?" James asked, still in Apache. "5 days ago," Aita answered in the same language. "First just heat, then the rash. Then he could not walk." James nodded, checked Neshoba's breathing, counted the heartbeats. "I need to get medicine," he said. "Stay here. Lock the door behind me. Do not open it for anyone else." He stood, moved toward the door. "Wait," Aita said, her voice small. "Why are you helping us?" James stopped, his back to her. For a long moment he did not answer. "Because no one else will," he said finally. Then he was gone. Aita locked the door, sank down beside the bed, took her son's small hand in hers. Neshoba's eyes fluttered open. "Mama, where are we?" "Somewhere safe, my son. Are the bad men gone?" Aita thought of the riders who had been chasing them, of Marcus Tate, and his promise to bring her back dead or alive, of Colonel Blackwood and his need for revenge. "For now," she said, "sleep, little wolf, sleep and heal." James walked through the darkness toward Sarah Coleman's store. The moon hung fat and yellow above the desert. Somewhere in the distance a coyote howled. He knew what the town thought of him. Half-breed, neither white nor Indian, trusted by no one, belonging nowhere. He had lived in Copper Ridge for 10 years. In that time he had shod their horses, repaired their tools, fixed their wagon wheels. They paid him. They took his work. But they did not invite him to their tables, did not include him in their gatherings. That was fine. James had learned long ago how to be alone. He knocked on the back door of Sarah Coleman's store. Waited. Knocked again. The door opened. Sarah stood there in her nightgown, a lamp in her hand. When she saw who it was, her expression shifted from alarm to wariness. "James, it is past midnight." "I need medicine," he said. "Antibiotics, willow bark if you have it, and clean bandages. For the Apache woman, for her son." Sarah hesitated. James could see the war playing out behind her eyes. Compassion against fear, decency against self-preservation. "If people know I helped," she said slowly, "if they know I sold you supplies for an Indian." "Then sell them to me for my horse," James said. "Tell anyone who asks that Shadow has a fever. No one needs to know the truth." Sarah looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Wait here." She returned 5 minutes later with a cloth sack. Inside were bottles and pouches, precious supplies that would cost James most of what he had saved. $5, Sarah said. "Double the normal price." James did not argue. He counted out the coins, everything he had earned in the last month. "Thank you," he said. Sarah's hand caught his arm as he turned to leave. "James, be careful. Marcus Tate has been asking about you. He knows you have the woman." Cold settled in James's stomach. "When did you see Marcus?" "This afternoon. He rode through with 2 men. They were asking if anyone had seen an Apache woman and child, said there was a bounty." "How much?" $300, dead or alive." James nodded slowly. $300 was a fortune, enough to tempt even good men to do bad things. "Thank you for the warning," he said. He walked back through the darkness. The medicine felt heavy in his hands, heavier than it should. Marcus Tate. The name brought back memories James had tried to bury. They had served together once, back when James still wore a uniform, back before Sand Creek, before everything changed. Marcus had not understood why James deserted, had called him a coward, a traitor. Now Marcus was coming, and he would not come to talk. James knocked 3 times on his own door, the signal he had told Aida to listen for. The lock slid back. The door opened. Inside, Aida sat beside the bed. She looked up as he entered. Hope and fear mixed in her dark eyes. James set the medicine on the table, began mixing compounds with the precision of someone who had learned from a master. "Your mother taught you this," Aida said. Not a question, a statement. Yes. She was a healer. She was Comanche, married a white trapper. I was born from that union. When I was 3, my father left, said he could not stay with an Indian woman. So my mother took me to an Apache village where she had relatives. James poured liquid into a cup, added powder, stirred. "They accepted you?" Aida asked. "For a time, while my mother lived. She taught me the healing ways, taught me the language, taught me to survive." He brought the cup to Neshoba's lips, helped the boy drink. "When I was 13, she died. Cholera. After that, the elders said my mixed blood brought bad fortune. They told me to leave. They exiled you. They did what they thought was right for the tribe." Aida watched him work. This strange man with the scarred face and ice-colored eyes, this man who had taken them in when everyone else turned away. "What is your name?" she asked. "James, James Dalton." "I am Aita. My son is Neshoba. It means wolf." James nodded. "A strong name. Willow bends but does not break. Wolf survives when others cannot." He finished administering the medicine, covered Neshoba with a blanket. "He will need 3 days of rest, maybe 4. The fever should break by tomorrow night if the medicine works." "And if it does not?" James met her eyes. "Then we will try something else. Not, then he will die. Not, then there is no hope. Just a simple promise to keep trying." Aida felt something crack inside her chest. When was the last time someone had fought for her? For Neshoba. Her husband Dakota had fought, had died fighting. But that was duty, honor, the way of warriors. This was different. This was a stranger choosing to help, choosing to risk himself. For nothing. Except she had offered herself, had promised to belong to him. But he had not accepted, had not even acknowledged the offer. Night deepened. Neshoba slept fitfully, the medicine beginning its slow work. Aida sat beside the bed, unwilling to move, unable to rest. James sat by the door, his rifle across his knees, watching the darkness outside. "You do not sleep," Aida observed. "Someone needs to keep watch." "You think they will come tonight?" "I think Marcus Tate is not a patient man." Silence fell between them. Not uncomfortable. Just two people existing in the same space, both too tired for pretense. "Why?" Aida asked finally. "Why do you help us? You do not know me. You do not know my son. You owe us nothing." James was quiet for so long she thought he would not answer. Then, "When I was 14, I walked alone through the desert for 2 weeks. No food, no water. I survived by eating insects and drinking from puddles that animals would not touch. Every night I thought I would die. Every morning I woke up surprised to still be breathing." He shifted. The rifle caught moonlight. "During those weeks I passed 3 different camps. Apache, Navajo, white settlers. I went to each one, begged for help, for food, for water, just enough to reach the next town. And they turned you away. Every time. The Apache saw a half-breed. The Navajo saw a stranger. The settlers saw an Indian. No one saw a child who needed help." He looked at her then, his eyes catching the lamplight. "I survived. Barely. Made it to a town, found work, lived. But I never forgot how it felt. To be dying, to beg for mercy, to be refused by people who had the power to save you but chose not to. So you help us because no one helped you. I help you because I remember what it is to be that desperate. And I decided long ago that if I ever had the chance, I would not let another person feel what I felt. I would not let another child die because the world decided he did not matter." Aida felt tears on her cheeks. She did not wipe them away. "Thank you," she whispered. "Do not thank me yet. Marcus will come. And when he does, things will get worse before they get better." Dawn broke gold and red across the desert. Light filtered through the single window of the shed. Neshoba stirred, opened his eyes. For the first time in days they were clear, focused. "Mama?" His voice was weak but steady. Aida was at his side instantly. "I am here, little wolf." "Where are we?" "Somewhere safe." Neshoba looked around, saw James sitting by the door. "Who is he?" "A friend." James stood, approached the bed, knelt so he was at the boy's eye level. "My name is James," he said in Apache. "How do you feel?" "Thirsty," Neshoba said. James smiled, a small thing, barely there, but real. "Thirsty is good. Thirsty means you are healing." He poured water from a jug, helped Neshoba drink. "You like horses?" James asked. Neshoba nodded. "When you are better, I will let you ride mine. His name is Shadow. He is old and stubborn and hates everyone, but I think he might like you." For the first time in what felt like years, Neshoba smiled. "Really? Really?" Aida watched this exchange, watched this scarred, silent man show gentleness to her son. Something warm unfurled in her chest, something she had thought dead. Hope. 3 hours later, old Sam Cooper came running. Sam was the only person in Copper Ridge who spoke to James regularly, a retired hunter, 70 years old, half-deaf, but sharp-eyed and good-hearted. He burst through the door without knocking. "James, they are coming." James stood. "How many?" "3 riders. Coming from the east. One of them is Marcus Tate. I would know that son of a bitch anywhere." James felt his stomach tighten. "How long?" 10 minutes, maybe less." Aida rose from beside the bed. "Who is Marcus Tate?" "Someone I used to know," James said. He was already moving, checking his rifle, loading extra shells into his pockets. "Someone who will not leave unless he gets what he came for. Me and my son." "Yes. Then I will go out. I will surrender. You have done enough." "No." The word was flat, final. "James, you cannot fight them. You are one man. And you and Neshoba are 2 people who have no one else. That makes it worth fighting for." Sam clapped James on the shoulder. "I am with you, friend. My shooting is not what it used to be, but I can still hit a barn from 10 feet away." James almost smiled. That might be enough. He turned to Aida. "Stay inside with Neshoba. No matter what happens. No matter what you hear. Do not come out." "But, please." Something in his eyes stopped her protest. Aida nodded. The sound of hoofbeats grew louder. 3 horses, moving at a steady trot. James and Sam stood outside the shed. James held his rifle loose and ready. Sam had an old shotgun that looked older than he was. The riders appeared, dust swirling around them in the morning heat. Marcus Tate in the lead, tall, lean, a face like leather left too long in the sun. Beside him rode Cole Reeves, a known sharpshooter, and Billy Cross, young and mean and quick to violence. They stopped 30 yards away, hands resting on their weapons but not drawing. Not yet. "James Dalton," Marcus called out. His voice carried across the distance. "Been a long time." "Not long enough," James replied. "I heard you were hiding something that belongs to Colonel Blackwood, an Apache woman, her brat." "No one here belongs to anyone." Marcus smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Still the same self-righteous bastard. Still think you are better than the rest of us. I think a man should have a line he will not cross. You and I just drew our lines in different places. My line pays $300. Where is yours? Standing right here." The smile faded from Marcus's face. "This is your last chance, James. Hand over the woman and the kid. You can walk away. No one has to get hurt. And if I refuse, then we take them, and anything in our way gets removed." James shifted his stance. His finger moved to the rifle's trigger guard. Not threatening, just ready. "I cannot let you do that, Marcus. Cannot or will not. Both." For a long moment no one moved. The desert wind picked up dust devils between them. Then Marcus laughed. Sharp, humorless. "You know the funny thing, James, I always wondered what happened to you after you deserted. Wondered if you found peace, if you found a home. But looking at you now, standing in front of some stranger's shed protecting people you do not even know, I realize something. You are still lost. Still trying to save the world one broken soul at a time. Still thinking that will make up for all the ones you could not save at Sand Creek." The words hit like physical blows. James felt them land, felt old wounds tear open, but he did not flinch. "You might be right," he said quietly, "but at least I am trying. What are you doing, Marcus? besides hunting women and children for money? Something dark flickered in Marcus's eyes. Anger, maybe shame. "We will be back," Marcus said. "Tonight. And next time, we will not ask nicely." He pulled his horse around. Cole and Billy followed. They rode away. 3 shapes dissolving into heat, shimmer, and dust. Sam let out a long breath. Well, that could have gone worse. James lowered his rifle. His hands were steady, but his heart hammered against his ribs. "It will go worse tonight," he said. "They will come when it is dark, when they have the advantage. Then we prepare." James looked at the old man. "Sam, you do not have to—" "Boy, I am 67 years old. I have seen 3 wars and survived 2 wives. If this is how I go out defending a kid and his mama against hired killers, then it is a damn sight better ending than dying in bed from old age and regret." Despite everything, James felt warmth in his chest. "Thank you, Sam." "Do not thank me. Just make sure we win." Inside the shed, Aida had heard everything through the thin walls. When James came back in, she was standing, waiting. "I heard," she said. "Then you know they will return." "I know you are going to die because of me." "Maybe." "There is no maybe. You are 1 man. They are 3. Plus whoever else they bring. You cannot win." James set his rifle against the wall, poured water from the jug, drank. "Probably not," he admitted. "Then why? Why throw your life away for strangers? You do not know us. After tonight you will never see us again. What is the point?" James set down the cup, looked at her, really looked at her. "When I was that boy's age," he said, gesturing to Neshoba sleeping on the bed, "when I was lost in the desert dying, I made a promise to myself. I said if I survived, if I lived through that, I would never let another person suffer what I suffered. I would never look away when someone needed help, even if it cost you your life. Especially then, because a life spent looking away is not worth living." Aida felt something shift inside her. This man, this stranger, he was willing to die for a principle, for an idea of what was right. In her world, men died for honor, for revenge, for territory. But this was different. This was dying for people you did not know, for strangers who could not repay you. "I do not understand you, James Dalton," she said. "That is fine. You do not have to." He moved toward the door. Aida's voice stopped him. "My offer still stands," she said. "If we survive this, if my son lives, I will keep my promise. I will be yours, whatever that means." James turned. His blue eyes found hers in the dim light. "I heard your offer," he said, "but I did not accept it, and I will not." Then he was gone, leaving Aida standing alone, confused, angry, and something else, something that felt dangerously close to respect. That day I made a choice, not because it was smart, not because it would end well, but because it was the only choice I could live with. Marcus Tate was right about one thing. I was still trying to save the world 1 person at a time, still trying to make up for all the ones I failed to save. But he was wrong about another thing. I was not lost. For the first time in years I knew exactly where I stood. I stood between a mother and her child and the men who wanted them dead. I stood on a line I had drawn in the sand long ago, the line that said some things are worth fighting for, even if you fight alone, even if you lose. That night Marcus Tate would come back. He would bring violence and rage and the promise of death, but he would also bring something else, something he did not expect. He would bring the moment when everything changed. War has a way of finding men who think they have left it behind. I thought I had buried my past in the desert sand, thought I could live quiet, invisible, alone. But the past does not stay buried. It comes back. Sometimes on horseback, sometimes with guns, always when you least expect it. Marcus Tate was my past, and tonight he was coming to collect. The sun climbed toward noon. Heat radiated off the red dirt in visible waves. Inside the shed, Neshoba's fever had broken. The boy was weak but alive, breathing steady, color returning to his cheeks. Small victories. James worked methodically. He moved the heavy oak table to block the door. Not much, but enough to slow someone down. He checked the rifle. 15 rounds. Not enough if things went bad. Never enough. Sam Cooper arrived with his shotgun and a bag of shells. Also a bottle of whiskey. "For courage," Sam said, "or pain, whichever comes first." They sat outside the shed, backs against the sun-warmed wood. The afternoon stretched long and tense. "Tell me about Marcus," Sam said. James was quiet for a moment. Memories surfaced, unwanted but unavoidable. "We served together, 1864. I was 27. He was 28. We were scouts for the cavalry, good at our jobs. Maybe too good." "Sand Creek," Sam said. Not a question. Sand Creek. Everyone knew about Sand Creek. The massacre. 700 soldiers attacking a peaceful Cheyenne village. 200 dead. Mostly women and children. The kind of thing that stained a man's soul. "We were there that morning," James continued, his voice flat, empty. "Marcus and I. We were supposed to scout ahead, make sure the village was hostile, make sure there were warriors, weapons. But there were not. No, just families, old people, children. We reported it to Colonel Chivington, told him it was a peaceful camp, told him to stand down. He did not listen. He said orders were orders, said all Indians were hostiles. Then he gave the command to attack." James looked down at his hands, calloused, scarred, stained with memory. Marcus followed orders, rode in with the rest. I could not. I put down my weapon, walked away. They called it desertion. I called it the only choice I could live with. And Marcus never forgave you. He thought I was weak, thought I betrayed the uniform, the unit, him. Maybe he was right. Sam took a long pull from the whiskey bottle, passed it to James. "You were not weak," Sam said. "You were human. There is a difference." James drank. The whiskey burned going down. Good. He needed to feel something besides dread. Tonight he will come to prove I was wrong. That strength means doing whatever it takes, no matter who gets hurt. Then tonight we prove him wrong. Inside the shed, Aida sat beside Neshoba's bed. The boy slept peacefully now. Real sleep. Not the feverish half-consciousness of the past days. She smoothed his hair back from his forehead. Her little wolf. Her last piece of Dakota. The door opened. James entered, checked on the boy, nodded with satisfaction. "He is healing," James said. "Because of you. Because of the medicine. And luck. No, because of you." James moved to leave, but Aida's voice stopped him. "You asked why they chase us. Why Marcus Tate wants us dead. I should tell you. You deserve to know what you are risking your life for." James settled into the chair by the window, listened. "My husband was Dakota. It means friend to everyone in our language. He was a warrior but not a violent man. He fought only when necessary, only to protect." Her voice grew distant, remembering. 1 year ago, June of 1877, a cavalry unit came to our village. They said they were looking for escaped prisoners. We had no prisoners. We were peaceful. We had signed treaties. We stayed in our territory. But they did not care. No, they did not care. The lieutenant leading them was young, angry. He said we were harboring enemies, said we would be punished. Then he gave orders to burn our homes. Aida's hands clenched into fists. There were 12 children inside one of the lodges. Their fathers were away hunting. Only women remained. Dakota tried to stop them, tried to reason with the lieutenant. But the lieutenant drew his weapon. So Dakota fought. He had no choice. The children were burning, screaming. He attacked the lieutenant. They fought, and Dakota killed him. The lieutenant's name was Robert Blackwood. Aida looked up sharply. You know, I guessed. Colonel Henry Blackwood lost his son last year in an Apache attack. The whole territory heard about it. What I did not know was the context. The context is that 9 children died that day, burned alive. 3 survived because Dakota killed Robert Blackwood before the fire could spread. But Robert's father only knows that an Apache warrior killed his son, took his scalp, left him dead in the dirt. So he hired Marcus to bring you back, to make you pay for what Dakota did. Yes, and I cannot blame him. He is a father who lost his son. I am a wife who lost her husband. We are both victims of the same war, the same hatred, the same cycle of violence. She looked at Neshoba. But my son is not. Neshoba never hurt anyone, never fought anyone. He is 7 years old. He likes to catch lizards and climb trees and ask questions about why the sky is blue. That is all. That is all he has ever been. Her voice broke. And they want to kill him, not because of what he did, but because of who his father was. Because Colonel Blackwood needs someone to bleed for his pain. James was silent for a long time. It will not happen, he said finally. Not while I am breathing. You cannot promise that. No, but I can try, and trying is all anyone can do. 20 miles away at Fort Whipple, Colonel Henry Blackwood sat in his office. The room was dark despite the afternoon sun. He preferred it that way. Light hurt these days. Everything hurt. On his desk sat a daguerreotype, his son Robert in full uniform, smiling, young, alive. Not anymore. Marcus Tate entered without knocking. Blackwood did not look up. Well? Blackwood's voice was hollow, used up. The woman and the boy are in Copper Ridge. Dalton has them in his storage shed. He refused to hand them over. So kill him. It is not that simple. The town is watching. If we attack in daylight, there will be witnesses. Questions. I do not care about questions. But you should, Colonel. You are already on thin ice with the territorial governor. Another incident and they will strip you of command. Then you will have nothing, not even the authority to pursue this. Blackwood finally looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed, sleepless. I have nothing now. My son is dead. My heir. My future. All because some savage decided children were worth more than orders. Then let me finish this, tonight. No witnesses, no questions, just results. How many men will you take? 5, Billy and Cole, plus 2 more from the fort, men who know how to keep quiet. Make it hurt, Marcus. Make her watch the boy die first, the way I had to watch Robert's coffin lowered into the ground. Marcus nodded. He had done worse for less money. But something in Blackwood's face gave him pause. The colonel was not just grieving. He was broken, shattered beyond repair, the kind of broken that spread like disease. Colonel, Marcus said carefully, after this is done, what then? Then I can finally sleep. Marcus left without another word. As evening approached, Sarah Coleman closed her store. She had been watching from her window all day, watching James and old Sam prepare, watching the Apache woman occasionally appear in the doorway of the shed, watching the tension build like a summer thunderstorm. Her conscience would not let her rest. She found Reverend Caleb Hart at the church. He was preparing Sunday's sermon, or trying to. Mostly he was staring at blank paper. Reverend, Sarah said, we need to talk. I know what you are going to say. Do you? Because I am going to say that we are cowards, all of us. That woman came to us begging for help, and we turned her away. And now James Dalton is about to die defending her because none of us had the courage to do what was right. Caleb set down his pen. His hands shook slightly. What would you have me do, Sarah? Stand with him. Stand with them. Show this town that mercy is not weakness. They will not listen to me. Then make them listen. You are a man of God. Act like it." The words hit harder because they were true. Caleb had spent 30 years preaching about compassion, about love, about doing unto others. But when the moment came to live those words, he had locked his door. "If I stand with James," Caleb said slowly, "if I publicly support harboring an Apache woman wanted by the army, I will lose my position. The congregation will reject me. Then you will learn what James Dalton already knows, that doing the right thing often costs everything." Sarah left him there, alone with his conscience and his cowardice. But as she walked back through the dusty streets, something stirred in the town. People had been watching, listening, and some of them, not many, but some were beginning to feel the same shame Sarah felt. As darkness fell, Aida made a decision. She waited until James was outside talking with Sam. Then she checked on Neshoba. The boy was deeply asleep, healing sleep, safe sleep. She kissed his forehead, whispered words in Apache, a prayer, a goodbye, just in case. Then she found James's extra knife, the one he kept in a drawer. She tucked it into her belt. When James returned, she was waiting by the door. "Teach me," she said. "Teach you what? To fight, to shoot, to defend myself and my son. I will not sit here helpless while you die for us." "Aida, no, listen to me. You say I am free, that I owe you nothing. Then let me choose, and I choose to fight beside you, not behind you." James studied her face, saw the determination there, the fear underneath it, but also the strength. "You know how to use a weapon. Dakota taught me. I can shoot. I can use a knife. I am not helpless." "I never thought you were." He retrieved his pistol from his pack. An old Colt revolver, 6 shots. "The trigger pull is heavy," he explained. "You have to mean it. No hesitation. When you point this at someone you are choosing to end their life, can you do that?" Aida took the gun, felt its weight. "To protect my son. Yes, I can do anything." Then we fight together. Full dark now. Stars scattered across the desert sky like broken glass. The moon had not yet risen. James, Sam, and Aida sat outside the shed. Neshoba slept inside, safe as they could make him. They did not speak much. What was there to say? Everyone knew what was coming. But Sam broke the silence eventually. "You know what I miss most about being young," Sam said. "The certainty. When I was 20, I knew exactly who I was, what I believed, what was right and wrong. No gray areas, just black and white." "And now?" James asked. "Now everything is gray, except this. This right here. An old man, a young man, and a woman protecting a child from men who want him dead. This is one of the few things I am certain about. This is right. Even if we lose, especially if we lose, because at least we will have tried. At least we will have stood for something." Aida looked at these 2 men, one old, one scarred, both broken by life in different ways, both choosing to fight anyway. "In my culture," she said quietly, "we have a word, Nakai. It means warrior, but not just someone who fights. It means someone who protects, someone who stands between the innocent and the darkness. You are both Nakai, whether you know it or not." James felt something warm in his chest. He had not been called a warrior in 15 years, had not wanted to be. But hearing it from Aida, it felt different. Not about violence, about purpose. "Then tonight we are all warriors," he said. They heard the horses before they saw them. 5 riders, moving slow and deliberate through the darkness. James stood, rifle ready. Sam checked his shotgun, old hands steady with long practice. Aida held the pistol in both hands. Her heart hammered, but her grip did not shake. The riders materialized out of the night. Marcus in front, Cole and Billy flanking him, 2 more men James did not recognize. Hired guns, the kind who did not ask questions as long as the money was good. They stopped 50 yards out, just at the edge of lamplight. "James," Marcus called. "Last chance. Walk away. Let us have the woman and the kid. You can live." "No." "Then you are a fool." "Maybe. But I am a fool who can sleep at night." Marcus laughed. "Cold and empty. Sleep is overrated. Money spends better." He raised his hand, the universal signal. "Take them." Cole dismounted, moved to the left, found position behind a water trough. He was the sharpshooter, the one who could kill from distance. Billy and the two unknowns spread out, creating a crossfire. Marcus stayed mounted, watching, directing. The first shot came from Cole. A rifle crack splitting the night. The bullet took a chunk out of the shed wall 6 inches from James's head. James dropped, rolled behind cover, returned fire. His bullet caught Cole in the shoulder, not fatal but enough to spoil his aim. Cole cursed, ducked lower. Billy opened up with a pistol. Wild shots, spray and pray. One bullet sparked off the metal roof. Another buried itself in the doorframe. Sam fired the shotgun. The spread was wide, but one of the unknown men caught pellets in his arm. He screamed, fell back. 4 against 3 now. Better odds, still not good. Aida stayed low, watching, waiting. She would not waste ammunition on wild shots. When she fired, it would count. "They are trying to pin us down," James said. "Keep us from moving. Then they will get closer." "So what do?" "We do not let them get closer." James aimed carefully, waited for Billy to pop up for another shot. When he did, James fired. The bullet caught Billy in the leg. He went down hard, screaming, 3 against 3. Marcus saw his advantage disappearing. He had expected this to be quick, easy. One man with a rifle could not hold off 5 trained fighters. But James was not just one man, and he was not just trained. He was desperate. Desperate men are dangerous. "Torch it," Marcus ordered. "Burn them out." One of the unknown men produced a bottle, stuffed a rag in the neck, lit it from a match. He hurled it toward the shed. It arced through the darkness, a comet of flame. The bottle shattered against the wall. Fire spread across the dry wood, hungry, fast. "No!" Aida screamed. Neshoba was inside. She ran, not thinking, just moving. A mother protecting her child. James tried to grab her, but she was too fast, too focused. She threw open the door. Smoke billowed out. Inside, flames crawled up the walls. Neshoba was sitting up in bed, coughing, crying. Aida snatched him up, turned to run. That is when Cole shot again. The bullet caught Aida in the side. She felt it punch through, hot, sudden, wrong. But she did not fall. She kept moving, kept running, got Neshoba outside, shoved him toward Sam. "Take him," she gasped. "Keep him safe." Then her legs gave out. She collapsed in the dirt. James saw her fall, saw the blood spreading across her dress, and something inside him snapped. Not the careful control he had maintained for years, not the measured response of a man trying to do right, just pure animal rage. He charged, rifle firing, 1 shot, 2, 3, not aiming, just moving forward, toward Marcus, toward Cole, toward the men who had hurt her. Cole tried to swing his rifle around, too slow. James was on him, slammed the rifle stock into Cole's face. Bone crunched. Cole went down. One of the unknown men raised his pistol. James shot him. Center mass. The man dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Billy was on the ground, wounded, trying to crawl away. James ignored him. Only Marcus remained mounted. He drew his pistol, aimed at James. "You could have walked away," Marcus said. "Could have lived." "Living is more than just breathing, Marcus. You taught me that, back when you were still human. I am human. I am just honest about what humans really are. Survival. That is all that matters." "No, some things matter more." James raised his rifle. Marcus fired first. The bullet took James in the left shoulder, spinning him, dropping him. The rifle flew from his hands. Marcus dismounted, walked slowly toward James, gun aimed, finger on trigger. "Goodbye, old friend." The gunshot came from behind Marcus. He staggered, looked down. Blood bloomed across his chest. He turned, saw Aida, on her knees, James's pistol smoking in her hands, her own blood soaking the ground beneath her. "For my son," she said. Marcus tried to raise his weapon, could not. His hand would not obey. He fell, first to his knees, then forward, face in the dirt, not dead, but dying. The remaining unknown man saw this, saw his employer down, saw 3 of his companions dead or wounded. He ran, mounted his horse, rode hard into the darkness. Silence fell, broken only by the crackling of the shed burning behind them. Sam held Neshoba close. The boy was crying but alive, unhurt. James crawled to Aida. His shoulder screamed, but he ignored it, reached her, pulled her into his arms. "You are shot," she said, her voice weak. "So are you. I had to. He was going to kill you. You saved me, like you saved us." Sam knelt beside them. "We need to get you both inside. Wait. The shed is on fire. We need to get you somewhere, anywhere. You are both bleeding." Sarah Coleman appeared from the darkness. She had watched the whole thing from her window, had seen the violence, the fire, the blood, and she could not stay hidden anymore. "Bring them to my store," she said. "I have bandages, water, a place to lie down." "Sarah," James said, "you will be implicated, associated with us." "Then I will be implicated. I am tired of being safe while good people die. Come on, both of you, before you bleed out in the street." Sam helped James up. Sarah and Sam together carried Aida. Neshoba walked beside them, small hand gripping his mother's dress. They made it to the store. Sarah cleared her counter, laid Aida down. James sat against the wall, both of them pale, shocky, fading. "Stay awake," Sarah commanded. She worked with quick efficiency, cutting away clothing, revealing wounds. Aida's was bad, through and through, missed vital organs by inches. James's was cleaner, bullets still lodged in muscle, would need to come out. "This will hurt," Sarah said. "Everything hurts," Aida whispered. "One more pain is nothing." Sarah cleaned, stitched, bandaged, her hands steady despite never having done this before. Fear makes people capable of surprising things. So does necessity. An hour later, both wounds were bound, both patients still alive. Barely, but alive. Neshoba sat between them, one small hand holding his mother's, one holding James's. "Are you going to die?" the boy asked. James managed a weak smile. "Not today, little wolf. Not today." Dawn came slowly, pink and gold across a town that had seen violence in its streets. The burned shed smoldered. Marcus Tate lay where he fell, still breathing, barely. Sam had tied him up, made sure he would not run. Cole had fled in the night. Billy was found trying to crawl back toward Fort Whipple. He would not make it. Word spread through Copper Ridge, not the version Marcus would have told, but the truth, that 5 armed men had come to kill a woman and her child, that James Dalton and old Sam Cooper had stood against them, that an Apache woman had fought beside them, that Sarah Coleman had given them mercy when they needed it most. And slowly something shifted. Not in everyone. Some still thought James was a fool, still thought Aida should be handed over to the army, still thought the right thing was the safe thing. But some others, a few, a handful, they began to wonder. They began to ask what kind of town they wanted to live in, what kind of people they wanted to be. Reverend Caleb Hart stood in the ashes of the burned shed. He had not come to help during the fight. He had stayed inside, safe, hidden. But he came now, and he wept. For his cowardice, for his faith that meant nothing when tested. for the easy path he had always chosen. "Forgive me," he said to no one, to everyone, to God. But forgiveness would have to come later. First, there was still work to do. They say the measure of a person is what they do when no one is watching. I say it is what they do when everyone is watching, and it costs them everything. That night we won. Barely. By inches. By luck. By the grace of a woman who refused to let me die alone. But winning the battle is not the same as winning the war. Marcus Tate still breathed. Colonel Blackwood still wanted blood. And somewhere in the night men were gathering, planning, preparing to finish what they started. The real fight was still ahead, and this time we would need more than rifles and courage. We would need the one thing that seemed impossible in a territory built on hatred and fear. We would need people to care. Winter came quietly to the high desert. The fierce heat of summer and the gentle warmth of autumn gave way to cold nights and mornings touched with frost. Snow was rare this far south, but when it came it transformed the landscape into something almost magical. It was December now. 5 months since Eli had found Ayanna and Dakota in the desert. 5 months that felt both like a lifetime and like no time at all. The garden had been harvested weeks ago. Squash and corn and beans filled the small root cellar Eli had dug beneath the house. They had enough food to last through winter with some to spare. Ayanna had dried herbs and stored them in jars labeled in her careful handwriting. The chickens still laid eggs, though fewer now in the cold. They had settled into a rhythm. Eli tended the animals and repaired what needed repairing. Ayanna cooked and healed and taught Dakota. The boy had learned to read simple sentences and could write his name in careful crooked letters. They were a family now, not officially, not in any legal sense, but in the ways that mattered. On the 15th of December, Eli rode into town and returned with a small pine tree strapped to Dusty's back. It was scraggly and uneven, but it was green and it smelled of forest and winter. Dakota watched with wide eyes as Eli carried it into the house and set it in a bucket of sand near the window. "What is it?" the boy asked. "Christmas tree," Eli said. "It's a tradition. White folks put them up in December." "Why?" "To celebrate. To make the dark months brighter." Dakota walked around the tree, examining it from all angles. "What do we do with it?" "Decorate it. Make it pretty." Ayanna had been listening from the kitchen. She came to stand beside her son. "We can make decorations," she said. "From paper, fabric, whatever we have." They spent the afternoon creating ornaments. Ayanna cut shapes from scraps of fabric and filled them with dried lavender, stitching them closed. Dakota folded paper into stars, his tongue poking out in concentration. Eli carved small figures from wood rough but recognizable. A bird, a horse, a simple cross. By evening the tree was transformed. It would not win any prizes, but it was theirs, made with their hands and their time and their care. Dakota stood back, admiring their work. "It's beautiful," he said with complete sincerity. Eli felt something catch in his chest. The boy's joy was so pure, so uncomplicated. It made the world feel less heavy. That night, after Dakota had gone to bed, Eli and Ayanna sat by the fire. Snow had begun to fall outside, soft flakes drifting past the window. "I've been thinking," Ayanna said. "About what? About Christmas. About gifts." Eli shifted uncomfortably. He was not a man who expected or wanted presents. "You don't have to give me anything." "I want to. You've given us so much." "You've given me just as much." She smiled. "Then we will both give, and both receive." Over the next week, each of them worked in secret. Ayanna spent hours in the small bedroom with the door closed, her needle flashing in lamplight. Dakota disappeared into the barn with paper and charcoal, returning with mysterious smudges on his hands. Eli rode into town and made a purchase he hoped was right. Christmas morning arrived cold and clear. The sun rose over a world blanketed in white. 3 inches of snow had fallen during the night, muffling sound and making everything feel hushed and new. Dakota woke first, as children do. He shook his mother awake, then ran to the main room where Eli was already building up the fire. "Is it Christmas?" the boy asked. It is. Can we open gifts now? Eli looked at Ayanna, who had emerged wrapped in a blanket. She nodded, smiling. Yes, we can. They gathered near the tree. 3 simple packages wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. Eli handed the smallest to Dakota. This is for you. The boy tore the paper away. Inside was a harmonica, not new but well cared for, better than the one Eli had let him try months ago. Dakota's eyes went wide. For me, for you, so you can learn to play properly. The boy put it to his lips and blew. A clear note rang out. He tried another, then another, already experimenting with sound. Ayanna handed Eli a package. It was soft yielding. Open it, she said. Inside was a wool sweater. She had unraveled an old blanket and re-knit it into something new. The stitches were even and tight. The color was a deep charcoal gray. Eli held it up. It would fit perfectly. This must have taken weeks. 2 months. I worked at night after Dakota slept. He pulled it on. The wool was warm, slightly rough against his skin. It felt like care made tangible. Thank you, he said, his voice thick. You're welcome. Dakota held out a folded piece of paper to both of them. This is for you. Both of you. Ayanna unfolded it carefully. It was a drawing in charcoal, crude but recognizable. 3 figures standing in front of a house. A tall man, a woman, and a small boy. Above them, Dakota had written in careful letters, My family. Ayanna pressed the paper to her chest, her eyes brimming. It's perfect, she whispered. Dakota beamed. They spent the morning together. Eli taught Dakota a simple song on the harmonica. Ayanna cooked a special meal using the last of their dried venison and the precious store of flour. They ate until they were full, talking and laughing. In the afternoon they went outside. The snow was perfect for packing. Dakota had never made a snowball before. Eli showed him how, and soon they were engaged in a gentle battle, lobbing snow at each other, while Ayanna watched from the porch, laughing. The boy's cheeks were red with cold and joy. His laughter echoed across the white landscape. Eli caught Ayanna's eye. In that moment, they understood each other completely. This was what they had built. This happiness, this peace, this family. As the sun began to set, they came back inside cold and damp and happy. They dried off by the fire, drinking hot tea Ayanna had brewed from mint and honey. Dakota fell asleep on the floor near the tree, the harmonica still clutched in his hand. Eli lifted him gently and carried him to the small bedroom, laying him on the bed and covering him with blankets. When he returned to the main room, Ayanna was standing by the window, looking out at the snow-covered desert. The last light of day painted everything in shades of blue and purple. This was a good day, she said. The best I've had in years. She turned to look at him. I never thought I could feel this again. Safe, happy, home. Eli moved to stand beside her. I never thought I deserved it. And now? Now I think maybe I was wrong. Maybe we all deserve moments like this. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching darkness fall. January brought bitter cold. The well froze twice, and Eli had to break the ice with an axe each morning. The chickens huddled in the barn, refusing to venture into the cold. Supplies ran low, and Eli made the frozen journey into town to replenish flour and coffee. But inside the house there was warmth. The fire burned constantly. They told stories on long evenings. Ayanna taught Dakota and Eli words in Apache. Eli taught them both to play simple card games. It was during one of these evenings in late January that Dakota asked a question that changed everything. Eli, the boy said, looking up from the book he was trying to read, are you my father now? The room went silent. The fire crackled. Outside wind howled across the desert. Eli looked at Ayanna. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes held something he could not quite name. He turned back to Dakota and chose his words carefully. I'm not your father by blood. That was Nyalnish. He was a good man, and you should remember him." Dakota nodded seriously. "I remember him. A little. But," Eli continued, "I care for you the way a father should. I teach you things. I keep you safe. I want you to grow up strong and smart and kind." He paused. "So if you want to think of me as your father, I would be honored." Dakota considered this. "Can I call you father?" Eli's throat tightened. "You can call me whatever feels right." The boy thought for a moment. "I'll call you Eli, because that's your name, but I'll think of you as my father." "That sounds good to me." Dakota returned to his book satisfied, but Eli and Ayanna continued to look at each other across the room. Later, after Dakota had gone to bed, they sat by the fire. "You handled that well," Ayanna said. "I didn't know what to say. You said the right thing. You honored Nilnish, but you also accepted Dakota's love. Is it all right that he thinks of me that way?" "Yes," she said simply. "It's more than all right." She was quiet for a moment, then spoke again. "I have been thinking about the future, about what happens when spring comes." "What do you mean?" "I mean this arrangement. It works now. But people will talk. A man and a woman living together without marriage. It will cause problems." Eli had not thought about this, or rather he had, but had pushed it away. "What do you want to do?" Ayanna met his gaze directly. "I want to stay. Here, with you, raising Dakota together." "So do I." "Then perhaps we should make it official. Not for us, but for him, so no one can question his place here." Eli understood what she was suggesting. "Marriage, a legal bond. Is that what you want?" he asked. "Truly," she considered the question carefully. "I loved Nilnish. He will always be in my heart. But he is gone. And you are here. You are good to me, good to my son. You work hard. You respect me." She paused. "I do not know if I will love you the way I loved him. Not yet. But I know I trust you. I know I'm grateful for you. And I know that what we have built is worth protecting." Eli nodded slowly. "I loved someone once. Long ago. She died of fever before we could marry. I thought I'd never care for anyone that way again." He looked at her. "I don't know if what I feel is love. I'm out of practice. But I know I wake up happier because you're here. I know I want to see Dakota grow up. I know the house feels empty when you're not in it." "That's enough," Ayanna said. "Love can grow from smaller things." "So we do this? Get married?" "Yes, if you agree." "I agree." They shook hands, formal and strange and somehow perfect. A partnership, an agreement, a choice to build something together. February brought the first signs of spring. Tiny green shoots appeared in the garden. The days grew longer. The cold eased though frost still touched the mornings. Eli filed papers in town making the marriage legal. They stood before Mayor Garrett in his office with Sam Whitfield and Ruth McLean as witnesses. There was no ceremony, no celebration, just signatures and official stamps. But when they returned to the ranch, Dakota ran out to meet them. "Are you married now?" "We are," Ayanna said. The boy threw his arms around both of them. "Good. Now we're really a family." And they were. Not through blood, not through romance, but through choice, through commitment, through the daily unglamorous work of showing up for each other. That night they sat by the fire as they always did. But something had shifted. The future felt less uncertain. The present felt more solid. "We should plant more corn this year," Ayanna said, "and maybe some melons." "I'll build another water barrel," Eli said, "collect rainwater." They talked of practical things, gardens and repairs and supplies, the ordinary concerns of people building a life. But beneath the practical talk was something else, a foundation, a promise, a quiet understanding that they would face whatever came next together. Outside the desert stretched vast and dark. Inside the fire burned warm and steady. and 3 people who had been lost found themselves at last exactly where they needed to be. Home. There is a moment after battle when the adrenaline fades and the body remembers it is mortal, when wounds throb, when exhaustion settles like lead in your bones, when you realize you survived but the cost of survival was higher than you knew. For me, that moment came 3 days after Aita and Neshoba rode away, when the town returned to normal, when people stopped talking about what had happened and went back to their lives. That is when the pain truly began, not in my shoulder, but deeper, in the place where a man keeps his hopes and his regrets. James woke in the small room behind Sarah Coleman's store, the same room where he had recovered, where Aita had recovered, now empty except for him. His shoulder ached. The wound was healing but slowly. He could use his arm, but lifting anything heavier than a coffee cup sent lightning through the joint. He dressed, walked out into the store. Sarah was already up, opening shutters, preparing for the day. "You slept late," she observed. "My body finally realized it could rest. Coffee, please." They sat at the small table near the window. Morning light painted everything gold. Outside, Copper Ridge was waking, people moving about their business, a town healing in its own way. "Have you thought about what comes next?" Sarah asked. "I need to rebuild my shed. The fire destroyed most of it." "That is not what I meant." James looked at her. Sarah had become something like a friend in these past weeks. One of the few people who would speak to him directly, without fear or judgment. "What did you mean?" "I meant, what will you do now that they are gone, Aita and Neshoba? You spent 3 weeks protecting them, fighting for them, nearly dying for them, and now they are just gone. Do you go back to being alone, to your forge and your solitude?" James sipped his coffee. It was bitter but warm. "I was alone before they came. I will be alone now that they have left. Nothing has changed." "Everything has changed. You know it. I know it. The whole town knows it. You cannot go back to being invisible after what you did." "I do not want attention." "Too bad. You have it. Some people think you are a fool. Some think you are dangerous. But others—" She paused. "Others think you might be something Copper Ridge needs. A man with principles. Someone willing to stand for what is right. I am not a leader. Leaders are just people who stand up when everyone else sits down. You already proved you can do that." Before James could respond, the door opened. Sam Cooper entered. The old man looked tired, more tired than usual. "Morning, Sam," Sarah said. "Coffee." "Please, strong. I did not sleep well." "Shoulder bothering you?" "No. Conscience." He sat heavily, accepted the cup Sarah poured, drank half in one swallow. "I have been thinking," Sam said, "about what we did, what we risked. I am 67 years old. I have maybe 10 good years left if I am lucky, and I spent 3 weeks of my life fighting for 2 strangers, nearly died. Did not hesitate." "You regret it?" James asked quietly. "Hell no. Best 3 weeks I have had in years. Felt alive, felt useful, felt like I mattered." He looked at James. "But now they are gone, and I am back to being a useless old man who drinks too much and complains about his joints. And I realize I do not want that. I want to matter. I want to stand for something again." "So what will you do?" "I do not know yet, but I will find something. We all should. Because what we did, what we proved, is that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they choose to, and I do not want to forget that, do not want to go back to sleep." That afternoon a rider came from Fort Whipple, a young corporal with a message for James. Marcus Tate wanted to see him, one last time before they transported him to the territorial prison. James almost refused. What was there to say? They had said everything that mattered on opposite sides of rifle barrels. But curiosity won, or maybe something else. The need for closure, understanding, some final word. He rode to the fort. His shoulder protested every jostle of the horse, but he ignored it. Pain was just information. It could not control you unless you let it. Fort Whipple was smaller than he remembered, or maybe he had grown larger. Changed. The last time he had been here, he wore a uniform, followed orders, believed in something larger than himself. Now he believed in smaller things, individual people, specific choices, the difference one person could make in one moment. They led him to the stockade, a stone building at the back of the fort. Inside, Marcus sat on a wooden bench, chains on his wrists and ankles. The wound in his chest was bandaged but healing. He would survive to serve his sentence. "James," Marcus said when the guards left them alone, "you came. You asked. I did not think you would. Neither did I." They looked at each other. Two men who had been brothers once, who had fought side by side, who had diverged onto different paths until those paths led to violence. "Why did you want to see me?" James asked. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, softer, without the edge of cruelty that had marked it before. "To tell you that you were right." "About what?" "About everything. About Sand Creek. About orders not being worth more than humanity. About there being lines a man should not cross no matter what." He looked down at his chained hands. "I spent 15 years telling myself you were weak, that you deserted because you lacked courage, that strength meant doing whatever was necessary. But watching you these past weeks, seeing you stand against 5 armed men to protect 2 strangers, nearly die for them, that took more courage than anything I have ever done. It was not courage. It was just the only choice I could live with. That is what courage is. Doing the hard thing when the easy thing is right there. Choosing principle over survival." Marcus shifted. The chains clinked. "I took Blackwood's money because I needed it, because I have spent 15 years as a hired gun, and that is all I know how to be. But watching that Apache woman shoot me, seeing her face, she was not angry, not hateful, just determined, protecting you the way you protected her." He laughed, bitter and sad. "And I realized I have spent my whole life on the wrong side, fighting for the wrong reasons, serving the wrong masters, and it took getting shot by a desperate mother to understand what you understood 15 years ago. So what will you do now?" "Serve my time, 20 years. I will be 56 when I get out, if I live that long. But maybe," he looked up, met James's eyes, "maybe I can use those years to figure out how to be better, how to be the man I should have been all along. It is never too late to change. I hope you are right." They sat in silence, the weight of shared history between them, battles fought, friends lost, roads chosen that could not be unchosen. "James," Marcus said finally, "what you did, standing for that woman and her boy, it mattered, more than you know. Word is spreading, about Copper Ridge, about people choosing mercy. Other towns are talking, some are angry, but others are asking questions, wondering if there is another way. I was not trying to start a movement. I was trying to save 2 lives. Sometimes that is how movements start. One person making one choice, and others seeing it, being inspired by it, wondering if they could be that brave. I am not brave. I am just tired of looking away. Then maybe that is what the world needs, more people who are tired of looking away." James left the fort as the sun began its descent toward the western mountains. His mind churned with Marcus's words, about changing, about second chances, about the ripples one choice could make. He rode back to Copper Ridge slowly. His shoulder throbbed. His body was tired, but his thoughts would not quiet. When he reached the edge of town, someone was waiting for him, a figure standing beside the burned remains of his shed. For a moment, his heart leaped. Ayita. She had come back. But as he drew closer, he realized it was not her. It was a different Apache woman, older, Gray streaked through her long black hair. She wore traditional dress and turquoise jewelry. Dignity radiated from her like heat from sun-warmed stone. James dismounted, approached carefully, hand away from his weapon. The woman spoke in Apache, fluid and formal. "You are James Dalton, the one they call Guardian." "I am James Dalton. I do not know about Guardian." "That is what Aida calls you. She came to our village 3 days ago, she and the boy Neshoba. She told us what you did, how you stood for them when no one else would, how you risked everything to protect a child who was not yours. I did what anyone should do, but what most will not do. That is the difference." The woman stepped closer. Her eyes were sharp, assessing. "I am Desba, elder of the White Mountain Band. I have come to offer you something. I do not need payment. This is not payment, it is recognition. Among my people, when someone performs an act of great courage, when they protect the helpless at risk to themselves, we have a ceremony. We adopt them into the tribe, make them family. You would be welcome among us, have a place, a people." James felt something catch in his throat. For a moment he could not speak. A place, a people, the two things he had not had since he was 13 years old. "I am honored," he managed. "Truly, but I cannot accept." "Why not?" "Because I am not trying to find a people. I am trying to find a way to live with all people. Apache, white, Mexican, anyone who needs help. If I belong only to one group, I cannot serve everyone." Desba studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled. It transformed her face, made her look younger, gentler. "You are wise for one so scarred by life. Most men want to belong somewhere, but you choose to belong everywhere. That is rare. Or foolish. Often the same thing." She reached into a leather pouch at her belt, drew out something wrapped in soft hide, unfolded it. Inside was a bracelet, silver and turquoise, intricate knotwork. "Then take this instead. Not as a symbol of belonging, but as a reminder that somewhere in the mountains there are people who consider you family, whether you claim them or not." She held it out. James took it. The metal was warm from her hand. The turquoise caught the fading sunlight. "Thank you. No, thank you. For showing my people that not all white men are enemies, that some still have honor, that bridge between worlds is possible." She turned to leave, then paused. "Aida asked me to tell you something. She said the words in English so I would not misunderstand. She said, 'I will never forget what you taught me. That dignity is not something given. It is something chosen. And I choose it. Every day.'" Then Desba was gone, walking into the desert twilight, disappearing like smoke. James stood holding the bracelet, feeling its weight, its meaning, and for the first time since Aida left, the hollow ache in his chest eased slightly. That night James sat with Sarah and Sam in the back room of the store. They shared a meal, simple but good: venison stew, cornbread, coffee strong enough to strip paint. "You are quiet tonight," Sarah observed. "Thinking. About what comes next. Marcus said word is spreading about what happened here, that other towns are talking, wondering. Is that bad?" "I do not know. I was not trying to make a statement, was not trying to inspire anyone. I was just trying to do right." Sam chuckled. "That is how the best stories start, someone doing the right thing without thinking about glory or recognition, just doing it because it needs doing. But now people will expect things, will think I have answers, will want me to tell them how to be better. So tell them. I do not know how to be better. I am still figuring it out myself." Sarah set down her spoon, looked at James with that direct gaze she had. No softness, just truth. "You know what I think. I think you are scared." "Of what?" "Of mattering. You have spent 15 years being invisible, being overlooked, being the man no one notices or cares about. And now suddenly people see you, and that terrifies you. James wanted to deny it, but he could not, because she was right. "What if I fail?" he said quietly. "What if people start looking to me for answers and I have none? What if someone else comes along needing help and I cannot save them?" "Then you fail, and you try again. That is what life is. A series of attempts. Some work, some do not. But the trying is what matters." "Is it because it feels like the failing is what people will remember?" Sam leaned forward, his weathered face serious. "James, let me tell you something. I am old. I have lived a long life, done some good things, done some bad things. But you know what I regret most? Not the failures, the things I tried that did not work. I regret the things I never tried, the moments I was too scared to act, the times I saw something wrong and walked past because it was not my problem." He tapped the table for emphasis. "You did not walk past. When that woman came to town begging for help, everyone else looked away. But you did not. And yes, maybe you did not save the world. Maybe you only saved 2 lives. But those 2 lives are someone's world, and that counts." Later that night, James walked through the dark streets of Copper Ridge. His shoulder ached, his body was tired, but his mind would not rest. He found himself at the burned ruins of his shed, the place he had called home for 10 years, now just charred wood and ash, everything he owned destroyed in one night of violence. He should have felt loss, anger, something, but he felt only acceptance. Things were just things. They could be replaced. Lives could not. He thought about Aita, about the way she had knelt in the dust, offered herself as property to save her son, the desperation in her voice, the surrender in her posture. And he thought about his own response, how he could have accepted, could have owned her. Many men would have. Many men would have seen it as fair payment for the risk he took. But he had not, could not. Because owning another person, even if they offered themselves willingly, violated something fundamental in him. Some line drawn long ago when he was a boy being cast out, when he had learned what it felt like to be powerless, worthless, owned by circumstances beyond his control. He would not do that to someone else, would not take freedom even if it was freely given. A voice spoke from the darkness. "You are thinking too loud." James turned. Reverend Caleb Hart approached. The preacher looked older than he had a month ago. The events had aged him, carved new lines in his face. "Could not sleep," James asked. "Too much on my mind. You, the same." They stood together in the ruins, 2 men processing what had happened, what they had become. "I have been writing my sermon for Sunday," Caleb said. "I have rewritten it 6 times. Cannot get it right." "What is it about courage, real courage, not the kind we preach about, the kind we actually see in moments like these? And what does real courage look like?" Caleb smiled sadly. "It looks like a man with a rifle standing between 5 armed men and a mother with her child. It looks like an old drunk deciding maybe he matters after all. It looks like a woman who has been too scared to help finally finding her backbone." He paused. "And it looks like a reverend realizing his 30 years of pretty words meant nothing when tested, that faith without works is dead, and he had plenty of faith but no works to show for it. You stood up eventually. Eventually is not the same as immediately. You did not hesitate. You saw someone needed help and you helped. No calculation, no weighing of costs, just action." "I hesitated plenty, just not where you could see it." "Maybe. But when it mattered, you acted. That is what I am trying to capture in this sermon. The difference between knowing what is right and doing what is right. That gap, and how we cross it." They stood in silence for a while. Then Caleb spoke again. "The woman, Aida, she offered herself to you, to be yours. Everyone heard it, and you never accepted. Why?" James had been waiting for this question, dreading it, because the answer was complicated, layered, hard to articulate. Because accepting would have made her a thing, property, and people are not property. They cannot be owned. Even if they want to be owned, even if they offer themselves freely, accepting that offer diminishes both people, the one who gives and the one who takes. So you refused on principle. I refused because I remember what it feels like to have no choice, to be nothing, and I will not do that to someone else, no matter the circumstances. Caleb nodded slowly. That is what I want to say in my sermon. That true righteousness is not about following rules. It is about seeing people as people, always, even when it costs us. Will your congregation understand? Some will not. But I have to try, because if I do not speak this truth now after everything that happened, then what was it all for? The days blurred together. James worked on rebuilding his shed. Sam helped. So did a few others from town. Not everyone, but enough. The structure rose slowly. Studs and beams, walls and roof. It would never be fancy, but it would be solid. A place to work, to sleep, to exist. While they worked, people came by, asked questions, wanted to hear the story firsthand. James answered as briefly as possible, did not embellish, did not make himself heroic, just told what happened. Most people nodded and left, but a few lingered, asked deeper questions about courage, about standing up, about how to know when to act. James never knew how to answer. He was not a philosopher, not a teacher, just a man who made choices and lived with them. One afternoon a young man came, maybe 20 years old, thin, nervous. He watched James work for a long time before speaking. "Mr. Dalton, can I ask you something?" "Ask." "How did you know when the woman came asking for help? How did you know helping her was right?" James paused in his hammering, set down his tools. "I did not know. I guessed, hoped, trusted my gut. But what if your gut was wrong? Then I would have made a mistake, but at least I would have tried. The alternative was doing nothing, and doing nothing when someone needs help that is always wrong. At least trying gives a chance. But you risked your life. For strangers." "Yes." "Why?" James looked at this young man, saw something in his eyes, a question deeper than the words, a seeking. "What is your name?" James asked. "Thomas Wells. My father owns the general store." "And why are you really here, Thomas?" The young man shifted uncomfortably. "Because last month I saw a man beating his horse, really beating it, cruel, and I wanted to stop him, wanted to step in, but I was scared, so I walked away, and I have not been able to sleep right since, because I keep thinking about that horse, about my cowardice." "So you want to know how not to be a coward?" "Yes." James sat down on a sawhorse, gestured for Thomas to do the same. "I cannot teach you courage," James said. "Courage is not something you learn. It is something you choose, in the moment, when fear is screaming at you to run and you stand anyway. But how do you choose it? How do you make yourself act when everything in you wants to flee? You remember that fear is just a feeling. It is information. It tells you there is danger, but danger does not always mean you should avoid. Sometimes it means you are needed, that someone cannot face that danger alone." James looked at his scarred hands. "The woman, Aida. When she came asking for help, I was terrified. I knew helping her could get me killed. Knew Marcus Tate would come. Knew I was risking everything. But I also knew that if I turned her away, I would become the people who turned me away when I was young. The people who valued their safety more than a child's life. And I could not be that person, could not live with myself if I became that. So you chose. So I chose. And yes, I almost died. Yes, I lost my home. Yes, I suffered. But I can sleep at night. Can look at myself in the mirror. Can live with the man I am. That is worth more than safety." Thomas was quiet for a long time, processing. "Thank you," he said finally. "For what?" "For showing me it is possible to stand up, to matter, to be more than just scared." He left. James watched him go, wondered if the words would stick, if Thomas would find his courage the next time it was needed, or if fear would win again. But he had planted a seed, and sometimes that was all you could do. That night James sat alone in his half-finished shed. The walls were up but no roof yet. Stars visible through the open frame. Cold air settling. He took out the bracelet Desba had given him, held it up to the lamplight. The silver gleamed. The turquoise seemed to glow from within. He put it on his wrist. It fit perfectly, as if made for him. He thought about what it represented. Not belonging, but connection. The knowledge that somewhere people considered him family. Even if he never claimed them. Even if he remained alone, it was enough. A sound made him turn. Sarah stood in the doorway, backlit by the moon. "You should not be out here," she said. "It is cold." "I am fine." "You are a terrible liar." She came inside, brought a blanket, draped it over his shoulders. "I have been thinking," Sarah said, about what you did, refusing Aida when she offered herself to you. Everyone is talking about it. Some think you are noble, some think you are a fool. And you, I think you showed more strength in that refusal than most men show in a lifetime of fighting, because you could have accepted, could have had someone to care for you, someone to belong to, and you chose her freedom over your loneliness. It was not a hard choice. Yes, it was. You are lying to yourself if you think otherwise. You have been alone for 15 years, and here was someone offering to end that, to give you companionship, purpose, a reason to wake up. And you turned it down because accepting would have been wrong, even though refusing meant staying alone. Sarah sat beside him, close enough that he could feel her warmth. That is true strength. Not physical power, not ability to hurt, but the strength to do right when doing wrong would be so much easier. I am not strong. I just know what I cannot live with. That is what strength is. They sat in silence. The night deepened around them. Cold seeped through the walls. "What will you do now?" Sarah asked. "Finish rebuilding. Go back to my forge. Make horseshoes and nails. Live my life. Alone." "Yes." "By choice or by circumstance?" James thought about that. "Both. I choose solitude because connection is complicated. But I am alone by circumstance because I am neither white nor Apache. Neither this nor that, just between. Maybe being between is exactly where you need to be. To see both sides, to bridge gaps, to show people that neither and both can exist in one person. That is a generous interpretation. It is an accurate one." She stood, prepared to leave, then paused. "James, you did something important here. Not just saving Aida and Neshoba, but showing this town that we could be better, that we could choose mercy over fear, that one person standing up can change everything. Do not diminish that. Do not pretend it was nothing. It was just what needed doing. No, it was extraordinary, and you need to accept that, because people will come, like Thomas today, looking for guidance, for hope, for proof that decency still exists, and you need to be ready. I am not a leader. Too late. You already are." Then she was gone, leaving James alone with the stars and his thoughts and the weight of expectation he never asked for. That night I understood something I had not before, that some choices echo forward, that standing for two strangers would ripple outward in ways I could not predict or control, that I had become something I never intended, a symbol, an example, a mirror people could hold up and ask themselves who they wanted to be. I did not want that burden, did not ask for it, but it was mine now, and I could either accept it or run from it. I chose to accept it, not because I felt ready, but because running felt like cowardice, and I had seen where cowardice led, had lived it, had suffered from others' cowardice, would not add my own to that pile. So I would stay, would answer questions when they came, would try to live in a way that honored what I had stood for, would be the man I needed to be, even when I did not know how. And maybe that was enough. Maybe stumbling forward with good intentions was better than standing still with fear. The bracelet on my wrist reminded me that somewhere in the mountains people considered me family, that I was not as alone as I felt. That bridges could be built between worlds if someone was willing to stand in the middle. I would be that person. For as long as I could, for as long as it mattered. They say time heals all wounds, but time does not heal. It just teaches you to live with the scars, to carry pain without letting it define you, to remember without being consumed by memory. 3 months passed since Aida and Neshoba rode away. 3 months of rebuilding, of healing, of trying to return to normal. But normal was gone, and in its place something new was growing, something fragile but real. Hope. Autumn came to Arizona. The desert did not change much, still hot during the day, still cold at night. But something in the air felt different, lighter, as if the land itself was breathing easier. James finished rebuilding his shed. It was better than before, stronger. Sam had helped design proper supports. Sarah had donated better lumber. Even Reverend Hart had spent a week hammering nails, though his carpentry skills were questionable at best. The town had changed too. Subtle shifts, small things, but meaningful. People nodded to James when he walked past. Not friendly, not yet, but acknowledgement, recognition. He existed to them now in a way he had not before. Some still avoided him, crossed the street when they saw him coming, muttered about Indian lovers and troublemakers. James did not blame them. Fear was a hard thing to unlearn. But others stopped to talk, asked how he was healing, mentioned they were proud of what he did, said the town needed more men like him. James never knew how to respond to praise, so he just nodded and kept working. One morning a rider came from Fort Whipple, a corporal James did not recognize, young, barely 20, nervous. "Mr. Dalton." "Yes." "I have a message from Colonel Blackwood. He requests your presence at the fort, says it is important." James felt cold settle in his stomach. "What does he want?" "He did not say, sir, just said to ask you to come, said he would be grateful if you did." Grateful. That was an interesting word choice. Blackwood had tried to kill Aida, had brought soldiers to do it. What could he possibly want now? "Tell him I will come tomorrow, midday." The corporal saluted, rode away. Sam was at the forge when James returned. The old man was attempting to fix a wagon wheel and making a mess of it. "I heard," Sam said. "Young soldier practically shouted the message across town. Everyone knows Blackwood wants to see you." "What do you think he wants?" "Hell if I know. But James, be careful. Blackwood may have backed down that day. May have chosen not to kill Aida. But he is still a man who lost his son. Still dangerous. Still unpredictable. I will be careful." "Want me to come with you?" James considered. Having backup was smart, but this felt like something he needed to face alone. "No, but thank you." James rode out the next morning. His shoulder was better, almost fully healed. He could lift, could work, could shoot if needed. He brought his rifle anyway, just in case. The 20-mile ride gave him time to think. About Blackwood, about what the colonel might want, about whether this was a trap. But something told him it was not. Some instinct. Blackwood had walked away that day 3 months ago, had chosen mercy over revenge. That choice had cost him something. Maybe he needed to talk about it, to process it with the only person who might understand. Fort Whipple looked smaller than James remembered, or maybe he had just stopped being impressed by military power. He had seen what it could do, both its strength and its weakness. The guards recognized him, let him through without question, escorted him to Blackwood's office. The colonel sat behind a desk covered in papers. He looked older, thinner. Gray had spread through his hair like frost. When he looked up and saw James, Something flickered in his eyes. Not anger. Something else. Relief, maybe. "Dalton, thank you for coming." "You asked." "I did. Please, sit." James sat, rifle across his knees, ready but not threatening. Blackwood poured 2 glasses of whiskey from a bottle on his desk, offered one to James. James took it but did not drink. Not yet. "I suppose you are wondering why I asked you here," Blackwood said. "The thought crossed my mind." Blackwood drank his whiskey in one swallow, poured another. "I wanted to tell you something, and I wanted to tell you in person, face to face, the way men should. Tell me that you were right, about everything, about revenge, about justice, about what my son would have wanted." He stood, walked to the window, looked out at the parade ground where soldiers drilled in neat formations. "After that day in Copper Ridge, after I rode away, I came back here and I sat in this office and I drank. For 3 days. Did not sleep, did not eat, just drank and thought and tried to understand what had happened." "What did you understand?" "That I had become something Robert would have been ashamed of. A father so consumed by grief that he was willing to murder a child, to become the very thing I hated, the very thing that took my son from me." Blackwood turned. His eyes were red, but not from drinking, from crying. "I wrote a letter to the territorial governor, confessing what I had done, what I had attempted to do, offering my resignation, my rank, everything. I told him I was unfit to command, that I had violated every oath I ever took." "What did he say?" "He accepted my resignation. I am no longer Colonel Blackwood, just Henry, just a man, a father who lost his son and nearly lost his soul trying to avenge him." James sipped his whiskey. "Let the burn settle. I am sorry." "Do not be. It was the right decision, the only decision. I could not continue to wear this uniform after what I did, after what I tried to do." Blackwood sat back down, looked at James across the desk. "But that is not why I asked you here. I asked you here to thank you." "For what?" "For stopping me. For standing in front of that woman and her child and refusing to move. Because if you had not, if I had killed them, I would be lost forever, would be a monster wearing my son's memory like a mask. You saved me from that, and I will never be able to repay you." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Blackwood spoke again, his voice softer, more vulnerable. "Can I tell you about Robert?" "If you want to." "I do. I need to, because I spent a year hating the memory of him dying, but I forgot to remember him living." Blackwood opened a drawer, pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was a daguerreotype. He handed it to James, a young man in uniform, smiling, bright-eyed, full of life and hope. He was 23, just commissioned as a lieutenant, so proud of that uniform. He wrote to me every week, told me about his unit, his duties, his dreams. What did he dream of? He wanted to come home after his service, wanted to marry a girl he knew from Virginia, Sarah Hutchins, sweet girl. They had been writing letters, planning a future. He wanted to buy land, raise horses, have children, build something good. Blackwood's voice cracked. He was not a killer, not cruel, just young, following orders, trying to make his father proud, and he died because he followed the wrong orders from the wrong commander. The raid on Aida's village. Yes, I investigated after, read the reports, talked to survivors from his unit, and I learned the truth. Robert's commanding officer, Captain Hayes, was drunk, angry, looking for glory. He gave orders to burn the village without verifying whether it was hostile. Robert objected, tried to stop it, but Hayes overruled him, threatened him with court-martial if he did not comply. Blackwood took the photograph back, looked at it with infinite sadness. So Robert followed orders, went into that village, and when Dakota attacked, Robert drew his weapon. They fought, and Dakota killed him, not out of hatred, not out of cruelty, but because Robert was trying to kill him, because 12 children were burning, and Robert was part of the unit causing it. It was war. It was murder dressed up as war, and my son died because he followed orders he knew were wrong, because he was young and believed that obedience mattered more than morality. I taught him that. I raised him to follow orders, to trust authority, and that teaching killed him. James stood, walked to the window, looked out at the soldiers drilling, young men following orders, trusting their commanders. "I knew your son," James said quietly. Blackwood looked up sharply. "What?" "Not well, but I saw him 3 years ago. I was passing through Fort Verde. He was a fresh lieutenant, barely 20. I watched him drill his men. He was kind to them, patient, corrected mistakes without cruelty. That stood out. Most officers were harsh, but Robert was different. You never told me this. You never asked. You only wanted to know about his death, not his life." James turned back. He stopped me once, asked if I knew the area, if I could recommend good water sources for a patrol. We talked for maybe 10 minutes. He was earnest, wanted to do right, wanted to serve honorably, and he asked me something I never forgot. "What?" He asked how I could tell the difference between an enemy and a civilian, how I knew who deserved mercy and who deserved justice. I told him that was the wrong question, that everyone deserves mercy first. Justice comes later if needed, but mercy always comes first. Blackwood was crying now, silent tears tracking down his weathered face. What did he say? He said he hoped he could remember that when the moment came he hoped he would choose mercy, choose humanity. But he did not. No, he followed orders instead, and it killed him. But that does not mean he was evil. It means he was human, flawed, caught between what he knew was right and what authority demanded. Most of us fail that test. The few who pass, we call them heroes. The ones who fail, we call them soldiers. Blackwood wiped his eyes, composed himself, poured another whiskey but did not drink it, just held the glass, stared into the amber liquid. "There is something else," he said. "Another reason I asked you here." "What?" "I want to make amends, real amends. Not just words, not just resignation. I want to do something that matters, that helps." "What did you have in mind?" Blackwood stood, pulled out a map from a shelf, spread it across his desk. It showed the Arizona Territory. Red marks indicated Apache settlements. Blue marks showed military forts. "The Territory is planning a new campaign this spring. They want to relocate all Apache bands to San Carlos Reservation. Force them there, whether they want to go or not. It will be brutal. Families torn apart. People marched hundreds of miles. Many will die." "I have heard rumors." "They are not rumors. It is happening. General Wilcox is organizing it now, and it will be a disaster. Another trail of tears, another genocide dressed up as policy." Blackwood tapped the map. His finger landed on a spot in the mountains. "But there is a band here, in the White Mountains, about 100 people. They are peaceful, have not raided, have stayed in their territory. They should not be forced to relocate, but they will be unless someone speaks for them." "And you want me to speak for them?" "No, I want us to speak for them. Together. A former colonel and a man who saved Apache lives. If we go to the territorial governor together, if we present a united front, white and Apache, military and civilian, we might be able to save that band, get them an exception, let them stay where they are." James studied the map, found the White Mountain Band, realized with a start. "That is Aita's band, the one she went to." "Yes, I know." "How?" "Because I investigated, found out where she went, made sure she arrived safely, made sure no one from the fort was harassing them. I owed her that much after what I tried to do." James looked at Blackwood, saw a man genuinely trying to change, to do better, to make up for what he had done. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I cannot bring Robert back, cannot undo my grief, but I can prevent other fathers from grieving, other mothers from losing their children. If I can save 100 people from suffering what Aida suffered, what I suffered, then maybe Robert's death will mean something. Maybe it will be a lesson instead of just a tragedy." "You think the governor will listen?" "I think he might, if we present it right, if we show him there is another way, if we prove that mercy is not weakness, but strength." James thought about Aida, about Neshoba, about Desba and the bracelet on his wrist, about the people who had called him family. "When do we leave?" "You will do it." "Yes." Blackwood smiled, a real smile, the first James had seen from him. It transformed his face, made him look younger, less burdened. "Thank you. Do not thank me yet. We have not succeeded. We are just trying. Trying is all we can do." 2 days later, James and Blackwood rode for Prescott, the territorial capital, where Governor John Philo Hoyt maintained his office. It was a 3-day journey. They traveled together, camped together, talked together. Two men from opposite sides of a conflict learning to see each other as human. On the second night, sitting around a small fire under a sky full of stars, Blackwood asked a question that had been weighing on him. "Why did you refuse her?" "Refuse who?" "Aida. Everyone heard about her offer, that she would be yours if you protected her son, and you said no. Why?" James poked the fire with a stick, watched sparks rise into the darkness, considered his answer carefully. "Because accepting would have made her less than human, would have made her property, and I know what that feels like, to be owned, to have no choice. I will not do that to someone else, even though she offered freely, especially because she offered freely, because that offer came from desperation, not desire. She would have given herself to anyone who could save her son. That is not a real choice. That is survival. So you protected her dignity. I protected her humanity. There is a difference." Blackwood nodded slowly, stared into the fire for a long moment. "I think I understand now. Why people follow you, why you matter to this territory. You see people as people, always, even when it costs you. I am not special. I just refuse to unsee what I know is true. That is what makes you special." The fire crackled. Somewhere in the distance a coyote howled. The desert night was cold, but the fire kept them warm. "Tell me something," James said. "If we succeed, if the governor grants the exception, what will you do after?" Blackwood considered. "I will stay at the fort, not as a soldier, but as a civilian advisor, helping negotiate with Apache bands, trying to prevent the violence I once participated in. It will not bring Robert back, but maybe it will honor his memory, turn his death into something that matters. That is good work. And you could come work with me, someone who understands both sides, who can translate not just language but intention." James shook his head. "I need to be in Copper Ridge. There are people there who are just starting to find their courage. Thomas Wells, others. They need to see that you do not have to leave home to do good. That being a blacksmith who stands for what is right matters as much as being an advisor to the governor." "You are probably right." They sat in comfortable silence. Two men who had been enemies becoming something like friends, or if not friends, then allies in something larger than themselves. That week was the longest of my life. Waiting, hoping, praying to whatever gods might listen, that one man's decision could save 100 lives, that mercy could win over policy, that doing right could be rewarded instead of punished. Blackwood and I stayed in Prescott, waited together. Two men who had been on opposite sides of violence learning to be on the same side of peace. We talked, shared stories. He told me about Robert, about the boy who became a man too fast, about dreams that died in the desert. I told him about my mother, about being cast out, about learning to survive alone. And slowly something remarkable happened. We became friends. Not close, not brothers, but men who understood each other, who had walked through fire and come out changed. On the 7th day we returned to the governor's office. My hands shook as we climbed the stairs. Blackwood noticed, put a hand on my shoulder. "Whatever happens," he said, "we tried. We stood for something. That matters. But does it matter enough? We are about to find out." And we did. There are moments that define a lifetime. Moments when everything you are and everything you believe stands at a crossroads. When the choice you make echoes forward into a future you cannot see. When history holds its breath and waits. For me, that moment came in a governor's office in Prescott, Arizona, October 1878, standing beside a man who had once been my enemy, waiting for an answer that would determine whether 100 lives were saved or destroyed. Sometimes the weight of the world rests on a single word. Governor Hoyt sat behind his desk. His face was unreadable. Before him lay the map we had shown him a week ago. Red marks indicating Apache settlements, blue marks showing military forts, and one circled area. The White Mountain Band. James and Blackwood stood side by side, waiting. Hoyt looked up. His eyes moved between them, measuring, assessing. "I have spent 7 days considering your request," he said. "I have consulted with military advisors, with civilian leaders, with territorial representatives, and I have prayed. I am not a particularly religious man, but this decision required more than politics. It required conscience." He stood, walked to the window. The policy of consolidation was designed to prevent conflict, to protect settlers, to create order from chaos. On paper it makes sense. Gather all Apache in one place, monitor them, control them, prevent raids. "But people are not problems to be managed," James said quietly. "No, they are not." Hoyt turned back. For the first time his expression showed something. Compassion, maybe, or weariness. Hard to tell. "I have reviewed the reports on the White Mountain Band. They have kept the peace for 3 years. No raids, no attacks, no violations of treaty. They have done everything we asked, everything the government demanded, and now we want to uproot them, force them to march 100 miles to San Carlos, because it is convenient for us." He picked up a document, heavy paper, official seal. "This morning I signed an executive order, granting the White Mountain Band exemption from forced relocation. They may remain in their territory, under the following conditions. They maintain peace, they allow territorial monitors to visit quarterly, and they agree to send representatives to meet with government officials twice a year." James felt his knees weaken. He had not realized he was holding his breath until he exhaled. "You granted the exception." "I did. Because you were right, Mr. Dalton. They are people, and people deserve dignity, even when it is inconvenient for us." Blackwood's hand gripped James's shoulder. The former colonel's voice was thick. "Thank you, Governor." "Do not thank me. Thank yourselves. You showed me that mercy is possible, that enemies can become allies, that change, real change, starts with individuals choosing to do better. You gave me hope that this territory can be more than just violence and fear." Hoyt handed the document to James. "Deliver this to the White Mountain Band. Tell them their home is safe. For now. Tell them that their peace has been rewarded. And tell them that 2 men, one who lost a son and one who saved strangers, stood for them when no one else would." They reached the White Mountain settlement 4 days later. It was hidden in a valley between 2 ridges. Protected, defensible, beautiful. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Children played near a stream. Women worked on hides and baskets. Men tended horses and repaired shelters. Normal life, peaceful life, the kind of life that was becoming rare for Apache people. A sentry saw them coming, raised a call. Within minutes 20 warriors surrounded them, weapons ready, faces hard. James raised his hands, spoke in Apache. We come in peace. With news from the territorial governor, we seek Desba and Ayita. One of the warriors recognized James, lowered his weapon. You are the one called Guardian, the one who protected Ayita and Neshoba. Yes. Why do you bring a soldier? He is not a soldier anymore. He is Henry Blackwood, father of the man who died at your village. He comes to make amends. The warriors tensed. Weapons rose again, but a voice called from behind them. Let them pass. Desba emerged, the elder woman James had met months ago. She looked at him, at Blackwood. Her face showed no fear, only curiosity. Guardian, you return, and you bring the Father of Death with you. This should be interesting. They were escorted into the village. People gathered, staring, whispering. An Apache man who fought for them, a white man who had hunted them, walking together, speaking together. Ayita appeared from one of the shelters. She saw James and stopped. Shock and joy mixed on her face. James. Ayita. They stood 10 feet apart. So much said without words. She looked healthier, stronger. The wound in her side had healed. She wore traditional Apache dress now, hair braided with beads, turquoise at her throat. She had returned to her people, become herself again. Neshoba ran out behind her. The boy was bigger, taller, face fuller with good food and safety. When he saw James, he shouted with joy, "James!" The boy ran, crashed into James, hugged him with fierce strength. James knelt, held the boy, felt tears in his eyes. You are well, little wolf. I am strong. I am learning to hunt, to track, to fight. Uncle Koda is teaching me. That is good. Neshoba pulled back, looked at Blackwood. Who is he? Someone who was lost but is finding his way. Be kind to him. That evening Desba called a gathering. The entire band assembled, 100 people sitting in a circle around a central fire. James and Blackwood sat beside Desba. Ayita sat across from them, Neshoba beside her. Desba spoke in Apache. James translated for Blackwood. We gather to hear news from the world beyond our mountains. Guardian has returned. With him comes one we have reason to hate, but Guardian does not bring enemies. So we will listen. James stood, unwrapped the document, held it up so firelight illuminated the official seal. I bring word from Governor Hoyt. He has granted your band exemption from forced relocation. You may stay in these mountains. This is your home. No one will force you to leave. Silence. Then murmuring. Then a sound like wind through trees. 100 people breathing out relief. Fear. Hope. One of the warriors stood. Why, the government has never shown us mercy. Why now? James looked at Blackwood, nodded. The former colonel stood, spoke slowly so James could translate. Because of 2 people. Ayita, who told the truth about how my son died, who refused to let hatred define her, and James Dalton, who forced me to see what I had become, a monster, a man who would kill a child to ease his pain. They saved me from that, saved my son's memory from being twisted into something ugly. So I helped them save you, because that is what Robert would have wanted. Not revenge, but redemption. Blackwood sat. Ayita stood. She walked across the circle, stopped in front of Blackwood. For a long moment they looked at each other. Victim and grieving father, enemy and enemy. Then Ayita did something no one expected. She knelt, not in surrender, but in respect. And she spoke. Your son Robert fought my husband Dakota. 2 good men forced to be enemies. Both died for what they believed. Both left people who loved them. I cannot give you your son back, but I can give you this. Forgiveness. Not because you earned it, but because carrying hate is too heavy, and I am tired of being heavy. She stood, held out her hand. Blackwood stared at it. At this woman who had every reason to hate him, who had offered him grace instead. He took her hand. Rose. They stood together, and the circle witnessed what few had seen: reconciliation born from tragedy. After the gathering, James sat with Aida and Neshoba outside their shelter. The night was cold but clear. Stars scattered across the sky like spilled salt. Neshoba had fallen asleep against James's shoulder, exhausted by the day's excitement. Aida gently lifted her son and carried him inside. When she returned, she sat beside James. They watched the fire in the center of the village slowly die down to embers. "You did a great thing," Aida said, "saving our home. Blackwood did the harder part, changing. Still, you stood for us. Again." They sat in silence for a while. Then Aida spoke again. "I need to tell you something. About the promise I made that first day." James turned to look at her. "When I knelt in the dust and offered myself to you, I meant it. Every word. I would have kept that promise, would have spent my life serving you if that was what it took to save Neshoba. I know. But you never accepted, never claimed what I offered. For months I did not understand why. I thought maybe you did not want me, or maybe you pitied me too much. It was neither of those things. I know that now. You refused because you saw me as a person, not property, not a debt to be collected, just a person." She looked at him, her eyes reflecting starlight. "That was the greatest gift anyone ever gave me. You gave me back my dignity, my freedom, my humanity. And because of that I could heal, could become strong again, could raise my son to be a man who respects all people, not just men, not just Apache, all people. You would have found that strength anyway. Maybe. But you gave me the space to find it, and for that I will be grateful until I die." She reached out, took his scarred hand in hers. "Goodbye, James Dalton, my guardian, my friend. Goodbye, Aida. May your path always lead home." She smiled, released his hand, stood and walked back to her shelter. James sat alone under the stars. The bracelet on his wrist caught moonlight, a reminder that somewhere in the mountains people considered him family. It was enough. I did not see Aida or Neshoba again for 15 years. Life moved forward the way it does. Days became weeks. Weeks became years. I returned to Copper Ridge, to my forge, to the quiet life I had built. But the world had changed. I had changed it. In small ways. Ways I did not fully understand until much later. Word spread about what happened. About the blacksmith who stood against killers. About the colonel who chose redemption. About the governor who granted mercy. Other towns heard. Other bands petitioned for exceptions. Some succeeded. Some failed. But the trying mattered. Copper Ridge became different. People were kinder, braver, more willing to stand for what was right. Not everyone, but enough. Thomas Wells became the town's deputy, stood for justice the way I had taught him. Sarah Coleman opened her store to everyone. Apache, Mexican, white, anyone who needed help. Even Reverend Hart found his courage, started preaching about action instead of just words. His congregation shrank, but those who remained became better people. And me, I made horseshoes, shod horses, fixed wagon wheels, lived simply, but I also stood ready, always ready, to help anyone who needed it, to be the guardian others needed me to be. Until one autumn day in 1893, when two riders came to Copper Ridge, a woman and a young man, both Apache, both familiar. James was 56 now, hair shot through with gray, face more lined, shoulders stiff from the old wound, but still strong, still working his forge. He heard the horses, looked up, saw them. Aida, older but unmistakable, hair streaked with silver, face more weathered but still beautiful, and beside her a young man, 22 years old, tall, strong, warrior's bearing. Neshoba, the boy had become a man. They dismounted, walked toward him. James set down his tools, could not speak, could not move, just stared. Neshoba stopped in front of him. For a long moment they looked at each other, man to man. Then Neshoba knelt. "I am Neshoba, son of Dakota and Aita. 15 years ago you saved my life. You stood between me and death when no one else would. I have come to thank you, and to tell you that I remember everything you taught me, everything you showed me about courage and honor and protecting the weak." James's vision blurred. He reached down, lifted Neshoba to his feet. "You grew strong, because you gave me the chance to grow." Aita stepped forward, smiled through tears. "He has become a leader of our people, a bridge between Apache and white, a voice for peace, because you showed him what a good man looks like." "I just did what anyone should do." "No, you did what almost no one does. You chose right over easy, mercy over hate, and now my son carries that lesson forward, teaches others, changes the world one person at a time, just like you did." James looked at them, at the woman who had offered herself to him, and the boy who had become a man, at the legacy of one choice made 15 years ago. "I am proud of you both." "We are proud of you," Neshoba said. They stayed 3 days, talked, shared stories, laughed, remembered. On the morning they left, Neshoba gave James something. A knife, beautifully made, handle carved from elk antler, blade etched with Apache symbols. "For the guardian," Neshoba said, "may you always stand between darkness and light." James accepted it with both hands, felt its weight, its balance, its meaning. "I will treasure this." Good, because it represents something. The first symbol is protection. The second is courage. The third is legacy. You gave us all three. Aita embraced James. Not long, not dramatic, just a moment of connection between two people who had saved each other. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Then they mounted their horses. Neshoba looked back one last time. "I will tell my children about you, about the man who taught me that one person can change the world. That is a story worth passing down." James watched them ride away, back to their mountains, back to their people, back to the life he had helped protect. Sam Cooper walked up beside him. The old man was 82 now, still alive, still stubborn. "You did good, James. I just tried. That is all any of us can do. Try, and hope it is enough." James looked at the knife in his hand, at the symbols etched in the blade: protection, courage, legacy. "It was enough," he said quietly. "For them, it was enough." People ask me if I have regrets, if I would do things differently, if saving Aita and Neshoba was worth nearly dying for. I tell them this: every life is a series of choices. Most choices are small, meaningless, forgotten within hours. But some choices echo, ripple outward, touch lives you will never meet, change futures you will never see. When Aita knelt in the dust and offered herself to me, I made a choice, not to own her, not to accept her surrender, but to protect her dignity, her humanity, her freedom. That choice saved 2 lives that day, but it saved more than that. It saved Neshoba's future, his children's futures, his people's futures. It saved my own soul from becoming something ugly. And it taught me something I have never forgotten: that the measure of a man is not what he takes when it is offered, but what he refuses, what he protects, what he stands for when standing costs everything. I am James Dalton. I am not a hero. I am just a blacksmith who made one choice, who stood when others sat, who spoke when others were silent, who refused to let fear or hatred or convenience decide what was right. That is my legacy. Not wealth, not fame, not glory. Just the knowledge that somewhere in the Arizona mountains a man named Neshoba tells his children about the scarred guardian who taught him that one person can make a difference. And maybe, just maybe, that is enough. Sometimes the smallest acts of courage create the largest waves of change. Sometimes saying no to power is more powerful than saying yes. Sometimes protecting someone's freedom matters more than claiming their loyalty. I learned that in the dust of a summer day in 1878, when a desperate mother offered me everything she had, and I gave her back the one thing she needed most, herself.